Okay, good morning. And it's a really, really special morning. It's a big treat. My name is Uri Schneider. I'll be the host here and lead on Transcending Stuttering. And our guest today chose one of the best titles. Annie Bradberry suggested the title, and I love it so much. It should be posted on our fridges, tattooed on our foreheads, emboldened on our t-shirts. It should be on the bathroom mirror when we wake up in the morning saying, how are we going to get through today? We got so much standing in our way. And the title is How to Get Out of Our Own Way. And I'll let Annie really unpack that. I don't even want to go all the directions and ways that I thought about that. But I also want to just give a proper introduction.
That's by sharing it. Yeah.
I know, I can't hear you.
Yeah. Well, can you hear me now?
Yes.
There you go. I call that technology stuttering. It's just a little bit of a pause, and if you hang in, it's worth the wait. So here we are. What I was saying was Annie and I are going to try to be super present. And if you feel like you'd like to share this conversation, that'd be awesome, because I can guarantee you, you're going to hear some great stuff and some perspective. So I'll share with you, you have the opportunity to hear from Annie Bradberry. Annie is a longtime member of the National Stuttering Association, NSA, parentheses, this summer, having missed last year's conference, will be in full effect in Austin, Texas. I look forward to seeing those of you that will be there. I'll be there. I'll be presenting on Thursday. My buddy Dan Greenwald is coming for his first time. He'll be presenting on Thursday as well. And so many of you may be coming. You can post your comments of encouragement to those that might be listening as to how valuable an experience it could be if you are someone who stutters or you love someone who stutters. And then also aside on that, that's on the week of 4th of July, at the end of the week of 4th of July, so the next days after. And then the following week after that, Friends for Young People Who Stutter is having their conference in Colorado. So if you can do both, you can get a nice trip through Texas and Colorado, or if you can do only one, both highly recommended. Okay, close parentheses. So Annie served as the executive director of the NSA from 93 to 2003. Notice that I left off the century there. She also served the organization in many capacities throughout the years: chapter leader, regional coordinator, board member, and more. She's been a chair of the International Stuttering Association, a host for Stutter Social, which is an amazing, ahead of its own time, online community for people who stutter. So before COVID, long before COVID, a small group of people, and I believe we talked about this on several episodes, a small group of forward-thinking people realized, let's have meetups for people who stutter online. And back then it was Skype, it was Google Hangouts, it's now developed to Google Meet. But wherever you are in the world, these are online opportunities to know that you're not alone. So check it out, Stutter Social. Back to Annie's story. So you see she's been pretty productive in many different spaces around the world. She's been involved for over 40 years. She's currently the co-coordinator of the NSA First Timer Programming. So if you go to the NSA for the first time, you're going to get a touch of what she's all about. And continuing her passion in the stuttering community, she serves on the Self Help and Advocacy Committee for the International Fluency Association. She presents workshops, in-service trainings for local universities and school districts whenever she can. She recently posted a picture. What was that picture? It was like 40 years running or something like that, of presenting for a particular class. So if you're looking for an in-service or a speaker, put her at the top of your list. And her full-time job is currently as an executive director of a national nonprofit in Southern California. It's an honor and a privilege to welcome Annie, who's also a personal lifelong friend of my father and of mine. And with that, I always say, Annie, welcome, and feel free to share something that's not in the bio that you'd like people to know about you.
Wow. A few things were going through my mind when you were reading that, is that I grew up with the stuttering community, and I really feel that it has shaped me to be who I am. I feel so blessed, and I always say to those young or no matter what age you find this community, it will change you. if you embrace it. It really, really will. And I am so grateful and blessed to be here today and to be a part of this community. It's beautiful. And the title of Getting Out of Our Own Way is, I realized in my journey, there's those aha moments we have. And one of them was that, and this is not like, whoa, this is not an Oprah moment. We all see this, but there was a time for me that I knew it, but then I just stopped and said, okay, we need to face this, is that it wasn't the reactions of others. And I have strong feelings about that and opinions. And it just wasn't the reaction of others. It was basically this. It was me getting in my own way. And often, when it was really hit me was when I was reacting to a nonverbal situation where I was already projecting in my head what was going to happen and what my reaction was going to be. And I'm like, that's exhausting. I can't do that anymore. And for me, that was a real pivotal time that, as the switch, kind of went off, and that I realized I was in my own way. And I find that rolls over into all aspects of my life. It does. It really does. So bless you. Was that a sneeze or a cough?
I intended to mute myself, and instead I unmuted just at the moment that I had a laryngeal spasm, otherwise known as an allergic cough, just to make everybody comfortable.
Well, I have a small little summer cold that I got from a grandbaby loving me this last weekend. So I will be grabbing Kleenex and trying not to sound too nasal.
Nothing good comes for free. So as we said before we got on, we'll take Annie with the summer cold, and I'm sure you would take it also, to have that sweet grandchild spending time with you, even though it left you with a warm heart, but also a little sniffles in your nose.
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about, that was, my ears were, something was happening in me as you were sharing that. And I was trying to picture at what point in your life you're describing and maybe what that meant, if you want to go there or share any more.
Yeah, there's been a couple of those moments, because I've been it's a long journey. I found the Stuttering organization when I was just, 19, 20-ish, and I just turned 63 last week. So seriously, it's been a journey. And I always say I go 3 steps forward, take 2 steps back, and then I go, and it's usually, I'm really into self-reflection. So that's been very helpful for me. So there's been a couple of times. The first time I had that moment was when I stopped getting angry at the world, at the listener. And I have, like I said earlier, I have strong feelings about that. There are people out there, yeah, they're just, I could give them words I shouldn't be saying at this time of day. But there are always people who say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing. But I came to a realization at one point in my life that this is my stutter, and it's my responsibility to educate when I choose. Everything's when I choose. Share when I choose. And when I started to realize that I stopped focusing on what other people were possibly thinking. Again, that goes back to get out of my own way, because I don't really know, unless they are that small percent of people that vocalize not good stuff. It was all here. So when I realized it was so much of my own projections, and then realized that listener, maybe they have never seen this before. I'm very repetitious, and I stutter more when I don't feel well. And I've been stuttering more since as an outcome of COVID for me. Has been a little bit, I call it my sloppy stuttering, not as smooth as I like it to be. So that for me, when I realized, okay, I'm doing something you maybe have never seen. Maybe you have, but never up close and personal. So I'm going to tell you about it if I'm in the mood. I'm going to let you, I'm like not letting the listener off the hook because I know a lot of people disagree with me. But it's like there, when I would let go of the fight, and just said, hey, this is who I am. Let me talk to you. Most people are interested, embrace it. If they were, what's the good word for a person we don't like how they react? I don't want to, all these adjectives that come to my mind that you're not supposed to say.
Jerk.
Jerk, good word, much better than what I was thinking.
Again, we're just doing this is the rated G version.
Yeah,
Nina G was on last week. Believe me, she had a harder time than you keeping it.
Yeah, it's hard. G. It's hard to get that G. So yeah. So I just realized even the jerks, they just kind of, when you face them with, hey, it's like, whoa, they also they realize they're being a jerk. And so that to me was the first time that when I started to stop worrying and judging them, thinking that they're judging me. It's like, it's equal. Don't realize that when I'm having a negative feeling about somebody reaction, either they're a jerk and I see it or feel it or hear it, or I'm projecting it, it's the same thing. Right? The next moment for me was when I went through some intensive speech therapy and looked at it and saw it and saw what I was doing and realized, I don't like you. I don't like what you're doing to my face. I don't need an extra chin when I put my head went down here. All these things. I started to be more kind and more interested. And it's really kind of weird to say interested, but that's when I started to analyze what is going on, like knowing my speech is not great when I am not feeling well. When this gets stuffy, this gets sloppy. That's a lifelong thing. So that was another moment for me where I just kind of went, okay, let's not get caught up in this difficult cycle. Let's try to understand it, like knowing that my eyes just closed. I'm usually the queen of eye contact, but right now I'm not. So I knew that I just did a little. Maybe you thought I was flirting because I was fluttering. I don't know. But and then kind of looking at it on an overview and realizing all those is stepping out of my own way and just yeah. Does that make any sense?
More sense than you can imagine. And you're getting a lot of resonance from around the world. You've got Trudy Stewart sending love from the UK.
Oh my goodness, I met her so many years ago. Hi, Trudy.
You got Anita Blom sending lots of love from Sweden. And I don't know Mara Ormond also sending hearts.
She's a girlfriend.
There you go. You're bringing them all out.
Very cool. Very cool.
Not my girlfriends. They're all yours. So it's great. It's great to have you here and to just know, yeah, not only does it make sense, it resonates. There's also a lot of reactions coming in. So post your questions and comments. We'll try to weave them into this otherwise flowing conversation. But what an honest share. I'd love to have you take us even further with it. Like two things that strike me. One is what you're talking about sounds pretty significant. And I think it's easy to think it's replicable and a message to pass on to anyone at any stage. And I was wondering, with your perspective, thoughts about what age were you? What stage of life or what stage in your journey were you? And, how this was something you were able to do then, but perhaps not as a 12-year-old girl or as a 16-year-old girl. I'm interested in the value of what you're saying, but also the timing and delivery of these opportunities to open that door, not necessarily being right for everybody at every moment, but potentially with the right timing and the person being at the right stage, a real opener, and at the wrong stage and in the wrong timing, a real turnoff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think.
I was curious. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Meaning, I guess to be more blunt or explicit, I think there's great wisdom from these conversations and anecdotes of people's life journeys. And I think we just have to contextualize things and not take something that was true for one person and copy paste it as a blanket copy paste to another person, no matter their age, no matter their stage. So I'm just thinking certain things we can do at 20, we couldn't do when we were 8. Certain things we can do at 30, 40, we couldn't do at 20. And so just curious if you could shed light on like where you were at in your life and also maybe in your journey that allowed this to happen at that moment, but perhaps couldn't have happened earlier, as much as it's wisdom that's timeless, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. And if not, you have to put me back on track, okay?
No. We're going on, we're meandering on this trail and we've got time. It's time-based, it's not
Okay.
destination. It's a treasure to be with you. Thanks for taking the time.
No, this is an honor. This is an honor. A couple of things are going through my mind. I wrote down one thing. One of the messages I've always said and shared, if I've had the opportunity, was baby steps. I am all about self-care. My mom raised me to know about self-care at a young age, and that rolled over into my self-care of my stuttering, and that is kindness. And so baby steps for me, everybody who knows me says I always say that is, I'm a firm believer that if you find the organization, if you find an organization, I'm NSA's in my heart and soul. If you find the stuttering community, I don't care if it's at 18, 25, 35, 50. I call that, it's almost, this is kind of weird, but like a rebirth. So I say to somebody, okay, you're 44 years old and you just found the community. And so now you're taking these steps, you're learning from somebody, you're hearing, you're listening. Remember, you're as old as when you started this journey. So if you find, I'm 63, if I find it today and, okay, I'm still need to take baby steps, and it doesn't happen overnight. And I see this in Stutter Social all the time, is people coming in. I just did for the NSA older adults who stutter, and a woman came in who has late onset stuttering, and so she's just think about it. I've had a lifetime to learn how to cope. She's the first time she met and heard other women who stutter. So we talked about baby steps. It's just not you got to allow yourself the journey is the part. I think the key is allowing yourself to go on a journey. The first one, I'm really blessed that I kind of like my elementary years, and nothing. I honestly, speech therapy, nothing affected me. It didn't have an impact in my life. But in junior college, I went to a speech center, and there was a group for people who stutter. And Glenn Smith was the SLP. He trained under Joseph Sheehan. And we went on a field trip, and I got to go up to UCLA. I was in Joe and Vivian's home. And at that moment is when that was my first shift, my first paradigm shift. That's when it's okay to stutter began. And then I shortly found the NSA right after that. And that kind of like propels you, because that's their motto, right? And then from that experience, I started to get that mindset that it's okay to stutter, and find humor in that's when it became not so serious and it became interesting for me. And then shortly after that, one of the first what do you call them, like Survivor, the reality shows, was That's Incredible, and they went up to Eastern Washington University and interviewed Dr. Dorber Breitenfeld with the Successful Stuttering Management Program. And my parents and I were there like going, and it wasn't a cure, and it wasn't a quick fix. It was a Sheehan Van Riper thought process, 3.5-week intensive program. And that's before we had the internet, or we couldn't do this. So the only way that I could be accepted into this program was flying up there and doing a face-to-face with Dr. B. And this is when the first thing of true acceptance kind of got in here is because he would not accept me in the program if I was looking for a cure. My expectations had to be realistic, and I had to agree to his expectations. So it was a give and take, right? I learned that right from him. That was also, I have to say this, I'll never forget this, because I went up there myself, and when I got out of the taxi, I got out of the air, I had to catch a taxi to go to Eastern Washington. I wrote down on a piece of paper where I wanted to go. I didn't say it. That was the first time I had done that, because I had never really done that kind of an adventure. And it was the last time I wrote down what I wanted to say instead of using my voice. And
Just
so I
wanna
went there.
paint
Yeah.
that picture. You're how old?
I am, I went to probably 19, 20.
So you were
Yeah.
with your parents watching TV, and this episode came on. This was that same year, or it was a couple of years later?
It was the same year. It was like, it was, 8 o'clock at night, call the next morning. That's how
So you're
I
like a
was.
teenager in upper high school or something at that point?
I was not 19, so I probably just, just as I'm out of
Graduated, something
school.
like that. So you see it on TV, it speaks to you, you get on the plane. And then just to highlight what you just described, for most people, they know exactly what you're talking about. For anyone that might not have like the context, for a person who stutters, there are many things one can do. They can get the words out one way or another. They can choose to switch words. I'm not encouraging, I'm describing the things people do.
I was the
They might
queen of
switch their
substitution.
words.
Yeah.
Okay, substitution, circumlocutions, talk around it. So like turn a one-word sentence into, a whole long dialogue that actually might even hit the mark at the end, or maybe goes a different direction. But perhaps the most dramatic thing that one could do is to kind of like bail on their voice entirely and put it on a piece of paper. And I think I like how that's captured in a film called Transcending Stuttering, the inside story. And you'll see multiple renditions of this, of what my father titled the chapter, Hitting Rock Bottom. And then often that's the moment, as Annie said, that was the first time and that was the last time. You decide, I'm not going there again. So I just wanted to punctuate that. That was very powerful what you shared.
Yeah. And I mean, that's pure shame. It's hiding. It's taking, it's avoidance to a whole nother level. And so it was amazing. Think about that. I had to get on a plane just to be accepted. And so realizing that what I was going for wasn't a cure, it was a greater understanding. And I summarize it, peace. And I really didn't even plan to talk about this. It's interesting. The 3.5 week program, for the first half, the first week and a half, there was no therapy. There was looking at yourself, a tally book every time you stuttered, so you could start to understand what was going on physically as well. And so this transcended into that lessening the fight, because I started to understand, like today, I know my speech is a little bit more difficult. I'm going to squirrel, so bring me back, okay? Because I forget where I go. But I gave a talk to that university Monday night. When I use voluntary stuttering, which is a good tool, it goes real for me. It goes deep. It goes back to before SSMP, and I have to pull out. And I open up my talks to the universities like that, and even did it on a Zoom. In person, it's better because what comes back is not just this, but the physicality, the hand clenching, my leg moving. If I'm holding a desk, I could lift it up, right? And then I cancel it and I go back, and it's really fun and I'll tell you why I'm going there, but it's really fun because I get them to open up and say, how many of you thought this is going to be the longest hour of your life? And they're like, and you just watch them go. And then we talk, how many of you, they're supposed to look at my eyes, but how many were looking at my chin, because my lips are going, so it's cool, but I haven't been able to snap out of it for the first time. And I don't know if it's because I'm a little under the weather. because my speech has been more difficult, but usually I could cancel it out and I'm back to smooth me. I'm not, I'm not, it's really, so instead of getting angry and going, what the hell, excuse me, hello, Nina G, I I'm trying to be kind and understand, getting a small cold on top of the way I'm feeling from my COVID leftovers. This is it right now. So isn't it fascinating? I'm really trying to figure out why I can't get back to that moment on Monday night. So going back to the SSMP, it just, so the first week and a half was all about looking at it, interviewing people in the community to find out that they really don't care and they're interested in me. Um, and
And you just used that word that I just want to reflect.
yeah,
You said that you learned that the people in the community were just interested in you.
yeah.
And you used that word earlier to say for the first time you got interested in yourself and interested in your own stutter. Same
Oh
word.
wow, didn't
It
even
was
know.
this opening. It was this opening. And when you said it, you kind of said, oh, that's an interesting choice of words. But I love it. It's that idea of you said feeling, I think you said free or liberated. You didn't say liberated. I think you said free, peace. Use the word feeling peace.
Yes, yes.
And the opportunity to just see yourself as you are and to tolerate that. And I think what you were just sharing, like even now, an earlier version of you or someone who expected things were going to get a bit easier, a bit smoother, and they're not, that could really throw somebody. I think that has to do with expectation, and frustration is a function of expectation. So you got this expectation that isn't met, you get more frustrated. But if you, yesterday we did a clubhouse every Wednesday, 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern, and I was inspired by your title. And I'm squirreling, but I'm going to come right back. I was inspired by your title, Getting Out of Our Own Way. And I was going through a rough day the day before. So the clubhouse topic was how to bounce back, because all of us are going to strive. If we're human, we're going to strive for today to be a great day. And it's likely we're going to have some curveballs we expected or didn't expect or could have expected. That's not surprising. The surprising part is how do we face them? And so I use the word bouncing back, and my friend Dan Greenwald had a beautiful take on that. He said, why don't we just drop the word back? How do we bounce?
How do we balance?
How do we bounce? And we're not talking about speech. We're talking about like, how do you bounce through those moments, not with intention to get back on something, back on some track, but how do you bounce with the curveball? So I love, as I'm listening to you, Annie, as you said, usually, this would be a moment where you'd be smooth, Annie. Let's just bounce with it. Let's just roll with it. Like I'm happy to get any Annie. So back to your reflecting on that whole experience. But you were saying how you went into the community and you were refreshed, and it was a moment of like, wow, people are interested in me and not stuck on as much as I thought they were.
And it changed my life. It really did. I want to squirrel for 1 second. I wrote something down. I'm a very spiritual person, and there's a thing in that community is order up your day. And sometimes this is just can reflect if anybody's listening out there, and you wake up, and sometimes we know, or it could have nothing to do with even stuttering, but it's just we can restart our day at any time. And so it's like a restart your day, order up your day at that moment. Sometimes the morning's rushed and I'm crazy and everything is just not in place mentally, physically. And I'll drive to work and just like, I'm going to order up the day right now. We're going to do a restart. And I find that helps me also with my speech, or just wherever I'm at, anything, whatever it is contributing. So the SSMB
just to reflect back, so the love is pouring in from countries around the globe. A comment from Ghent, Belgium, from Gareth. Annie, one of my favorite people, one of the kindest hearts you'll ever meet. I couldn't agree more.
Thank you. And I love his city. I got to go, I'm squirreling again, but when I was speaking Monday night and they were asking me about that question, they were talking about how long I've been involved and my age and what I want to, looking back, wish I didn't stutter? And I said, I've traveled around the world because I stutter. My first conference, my international conference was to Ghent. And that's where I met Anita. And I think that's where I met Trudy. And that was a long, long time ago, and so I
Like
look at
5 years ago or something. It's unbelievable.
long
That
time,
time flies.
long time. So I look back and all these experiences in my life are because of this.
Mm.
So SSNP, my biggest takeaway about that I am grateful that I worked hard. When I came home, I practiced every day at lunch on my speech. I went into my car with my cassette player back then and practiced on this tape that they sent me home. And I really feel that was because you go home on a high. You're almost on a fluency high, right? And I did that. And I think that was really, really important to where I am today. But the biggest takeaway was no matter, like even right now, no matter how my stuttering might be, and I measure it by, like I called it, I don't call it bad. I'm not having bad days. I have more difficult days. But it's a little sloppy, the eye closure, this and that. So no matter, I'm still talking. I'm still participating. And that is what the big change was. Because years ago, as this gets worse, my speech gets worse. I'll never forget this. Squirrel. I was at work this job, and I'm in my office, and outside my office was a couple cubicles, and my door's open, and I'm on the phone, and as I get more stuffy, my speech deteriorates. And I see this young man literally pull out his chair, look around at me, because he's hearing me go from easy stuttering to some intense stuttering. He's like, whoa, and so I just remember that it happens. It happens, but I'm still here. I'm still gonna work. I'm still gonna participate in life, and that is the best takeaway, because we know it's cycles. We know that, right? It's out of our hands. But if I can stay level here, and it's hard, then I can deal with the cycles of my life and my stuttering life, right? So you got to put me back on
Wow.
track.
Who am I to put you on track? You're getting us on track. Trudy had a question and got a lot of responses to it. So I think you touched on it in your experience, but she was asking practical advice or reflection on what SLPs can do to help people make that move from shame and guilt and self-critique to a place that you're describing. Any thoughts on that? And obviously, for people themselves who might stutter, or for parents, you can shape this in any way you'd like. But I think for those listening that are thinking about this, I think to realize that in the world you have a lot of allies that intentionally want to do that. They want to be supportive. They want to be there to help a person evolve and unfold and flourish. It could be at work, it could be at school, it could be at a party, it could be kids in first grade with each other. People inherently are good. There are also a bunch of jerks out there. Let's not paint a rosy picture that shouldn't be entirely rosy. There are also some thorns along the way. So it's not unreasonable that people learn that their difference might be intolerable. But what are some thoughts that you might have for people that want to take a step to help nurture that process from self-critique and shame and guilt to the freedom and the peace to be?
It's a big question, because my head just went all over the place. Because
Take us.
well, I'm the most fresh in my mind is Monday, when I spoke to there was 35 students, and I kind of asked the same question. So to the young clinician, to the new clinician, there's no cookie cutter approach. Talk to us. We even talked about the young child, using different words, or circumventing the topic even, or that we do it. We know we know what we're doing, you know, and we feel it. I think from the child to, of course, the adult, but just to be open. And this is not for Trudy because she's a seasoned specialist clinician, but like for the new clinician is stutter with us, you know, let us know that, you know, that when I did that, I couldn't unstick it, you know, or I'm using, when the word love, I can't get that, my tongue sometimes off the roof of my mouth, and do that with us. And that's just for like the young clinician, is just be open, be honest, acknowledge it, because, you know, I spent my early years reading out of a book. It didn't do anything for me, but I wish that at that time they had said, how is it feeling for you? And I think as we age and we get older, my advice to people who stutter when they're seeking speech therapy is exactly what I went through back with Dr. B, is what are my expectations and what are the expectations of the clinician? They have to match. Not everybody, it's like friends or people that you meet some people and you click, and some people you don't. So I think it's the same thing, you know, sometimes it's not a match, and I think it has to be realistic expectations. John Harrison, for those that know John Harrison, and he's my mentor, and he helped me through so many major times in my life, and I live by this. Number one, am I being reactive or proactive? I used to keep it on my wall at work until it became ingrained, and it helps me and helps the other person. But then that everything, anger, frustration, sadness, um, um, what's the other word? Being let down, um, my expectations haven't been met. And so for me to go into speech therapy or to do anything, what is my honest, what do I want? Can it be obtained? Is it realistic? And as a clinician, is that a realistic expectation for you to provide that to me? Does that make sense? So to me, it's the when I said earlier today in the beginning, I can't believe I remember something I said earlier today, about it's very important for me to own it, right? So I call it's my stuttering. So I am not so impacted by other people's thoughts or opinions of what they think stuttering should be. Like I stutter, I'm a PWS, or I'm a stutterer. There's just a, you know, so the same thing goes to, I'm losing myself. You have to help me.
The
With
idea
those,
of helping people move from that shame to that
yeah.
place of the freedom and the peace you were talking about. You're right on point. Just keep rolling.
So it's just about staying focused on myself, making sure that my expectations, you know, going back to Trudy's question, making sure, I think dialogue, open dialogue of where do you want to go? Where can we go? How are we going to get there? And then looking at ourselves. I think that the mechanical part of speech therapy is super important, but it's more about the impact of all the changes that we're going through and the attitude. I was speaking to LA Unified School District a million years ago, and I don't prepare for things. I go, okay? But this time, because LA Unified has 50,000 speech pathologists. And so I went with my little index cards. And they said, if you get there early, could just go sit in the back of the class. And we're not a class, we're having our SLP meeting, you know, their bitching session, whatever, right? And I'm sitting there. And one clinician says, you know, I just don't know what to do with the student. I've been working with her for 3 years. She's still stuttering. We need to let her go, make room for other kids. I'm like, and she goes, and I can't, you know, she's still stuttering the same amount. And I just ripped my nose. So I started my conversation with them a little emotional because that's who I am. And I said, let's talk about what I just heard. And what I found out was this clinician was so hard on herself because she was measuring the student's success based on how much stuttering, and she was basing her own success on the same amount of stuff. There was still a lot of stuttering. So I said, so tell me about your student. Tell me about what she was like the first day you met her. And she said, she looked down at the ground. She didn't talk. She didn't participate in class. And I said, so can you tell me something about her today? And she started to laugh internally. And I said, what's going on? And she goes, she just got in trouble in this class for stuttering, for speaking, talking too much. And then we started talking about that. And she goes, and she tried out for the play. I'm like, hello? I'm getting goosebumps remembering that situation, and that how she started to then look at this young child, this teenager, differently, to realize, wow. I said, you've changed her life. She got in trouble in school for talking. How many of us would try out for a play today? No. And then that was a major shift in that room that day about what is success. So for me, what is success, when it wasn't about not stuttering, but it was more about how I feel when I stutter and the lack of judgment on myself when I stutter, that's when the shame starts to go away. I feel like I just tired you out.
Oh no, I got good stamina. I took a nap before this because I knew it was going to be a goodie. I actually just had a fleeting second there, and I posted. I said an instant classic with Annie Bradberry, and we're not even done yet. This is an amazing, powerful episode. One comment, and then I'll just share two things that were said by some other guests that really amplify what you're saying or punctuate it. First of all, I think, and we talked a little before we got on, there's a lot of frustration when you go in there and you see those SLPs and the way they talk about what they think their goals are and the way they communicate and position and write their lessons or their plans or their exercises and talk about young people and what they think they're working on. And often it feels to those who've seen it or been through it and it's been less than desirable or less than productive or less than helpful. It's like those people are doing bad things. And I guess I would just say how beautiful it is that you reached that SLP and you were able to uncover the true intentions there. And this SLP was just doing the best they thought they were supposed to be doing because they thought this was the target. And I think shout out to the great work of many great educators and instructors around the country who get it. People that are part of this tidal shift of at an early stage, imprinting into the minds of the next generation of training speech language pathologists around the world. It's more than just what you see and hear at the lips, and goals can be written and lessons can be planned and experiences can be delivered in a school, certainly in a clinic, certainly in a private practice and in camps and conferences and so on. But you can be an SLP that can do this work with spirit and with heart. And I'm happy and proud that in our transcending stuttering community, where we're cultivating SLPs who have that desire and supporting them and networking them together, that there's a subgroup of instructors from around the world who are sharing ideas of how to, teach this and train this into the outcoming, next round of professionals. So that's super exciting. And I'm just excited to share that with you and with all the people out there. So you'll have a little less work at the LA district school meetings, because those meetings can be very long, but keep doing you're doing. I was going to just bring attention how this series, we're up to number 62 now, just to share how it's like a cumulative collection of wisdom. And Steph Lebsack likes to say, it's not my stutter. Excuse me, she's a therapist, but now she's dealing with some disfluency secondary to some other events in her health, and we wish her well and strength. But her message always is to therapists and to her students, it's not your stutter. It's the person who stutters, it's their stutter, not yours. So don't hijack their experience. And the other thing that you said, Annie, that I thought was great comes on the heels of the conversation with Seth Tishner, Dr. Seth Tishner up in Michigan.
Yeah.
He said, not only is it okay to stutter, that's an MO mantra tagline of some of the best. Not only is it okay to stutter, it's okay to talk about stuttering.
Oh.
And I think what you're talking about, Annie, and it's a subtle point, but I think for therapists, what you were saying, for therapists to make that move from shame and guilt, and so much of what you kind of like meandered into is saying, you just discovered you got interested with it. Instead of like fighting it, clenching it, wrestling with it, you were started to be a person who was able to do some self-observation. And I think that's a big opening to move into opening up. I can choose to roll with it, bounce with it. I could choose to do something to modulate or adjust it, but I can make a choice suddenly because I have that pause button and that ability to see myself in that moment, to get out of that washing machine and look at it. And on the other hand, you know, if you're in it, you have no choice but to fight or to run and hide or to feel like the world is against you. And so just adding to what you're saying and punctuating it with some other wisdom that was collected in the recent episodes.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. You talked about, you did share with me, and you spontaneously hit some of the talking points that you did share with me. I'll just bring up one more thing that you said. I think I have it here. Hold on just one second. You said, there we go. The idea that people in situation, the power of self-talk. Can you just, because yesterday that came up for me and I was talking to some parents and yeah, and they were like, well, what's self-talk? And I think maybe you want to just shed some light on that. And
yeah, I'm trying to see if I have my little book here.
you could look for it for a second. I can give a shout out to John Harrison. I'll just say that on Sunday, we talked about the SSMP. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Ari Waldman also went through that experience, if I'm not mistaken. So
yeah.
I'll share a quick Ari story and it ends with John Harrison, and then I'll pass it back to you. So if you want to look for the book, it's fine.
Okay.
Last week at our team meeting, we all get together. It used to be for bagels for like 3.5 hours once a month. Now it's on Zoom. It's just as good, just less calories. And my dad just, as he often does, says, you know, excuse me for breaking the agenda here, but I just have to share this. And that took us down the following story, which was someone came to my dad and said, you know, I just closed a deal in Midtown Manhattan. It was a commercial real estate deal. And the guy on the other side says he knows you. And my dad says, oh, that's cool. Like, who is it? And his name is Ari. And my dad says, oh, like Ari who? Oh, Ari Waldman. And my dad says, that's awesome. That's awesome, because I knew Ari Waldman. He was a young man, very young man, and for a long time. And he had a pretty profound stutter. And somehow, some way, he just had this indomitable spirit and somehow believed he could do it and chose a career and a path. And today, as a married man and as a professional in commercial real estate, as a side hustle, he also has this organization he's putting together, Pathway with Stuttering. And so my dad says, wow, that's pretty amazing, because I know he has a really big stutter. And if you know Ari, you would know that. You also might know that over COVID, he's been doing Facebook Lives and just putting himself out there and pushing his own comfort zone. And it's inspiring, the consistency and the effort. And this man said, oh, no, you must have someone else, because the guy I did the deal with doesn't stutter. And I say that story not to say anyone should shoot for not stuttering. I say that story to say, Ari decided he was going to get married. Ari decided he was going to do commercial real estate. He went out there and he did it as a person who stutters. And he also decided he wanted to work on his oral communication skills. And he worked on that too. And so anything is possible, any path, any career, nothing is conditioned or like conditional, like if this, then that. Go for it, right? And I think it's just a beautiful story. So Ari asked me to do a talk and I had no idea what I was walking into. It turns out to be like a really cool international collection of people who stutter from around the world. And then at the tail end of it, who pops on? None other than, all rise, John Harrison enters the room. And it was just a really cool thing to have a legend kind of just slip into otherwise a meeting that was coordinated by a bunch of people who just decided this would be a good thing to do to bring people together. So shout out to Ari, shout out to everybody there, and shout out to John Harrison.
Oh, so the book that it really did change my life, and it's called It's What to Say When You Talk to Yourself by is SHAD Helmsetter, PhD. It's on Amazon, and I give it away a lot. That's why I thought I had a copy, because I usually keep it and give it. And it's just, it's that whole thing about going back to the beginning, getting out of our own way. It's what I'm thinking. Going back to that first, I think, situation was being in a situation and not even speaking yet and starting to think about what could happen, or what I think is going to happen, projecting what I think is going to happen. It's a full-time job, and so this book helped me, and I still today will catch myself like, hey, you got to stop that. And I think that's really important. I think it, there's all different kinds of severity. I'm a believer that severity isn't measured. I'm getting more stuffy, so I'm getting more difficult. It's interesting. Isn't it fascinating? See, it's fascinating to me. Instead of getting like, oh, it's going to be a crappy day of talking, it's like, this is fascinating. Like, when I scientifically look at my nose right now, to why is it affecting here? But so I don't know, I lost where I was, but it's just trying to stay present. That's what John also taught me, staying present and not allowing all this stuff to come in. And it's crucial. And when I was saying about, I don't judge stuttering on the amount of fluency, because I know many, many covert people whose lives are just, oh my goodness gracious, they're leading double lives. It's a full-time job in its own. So I really think that's also for the clinician, is you can't measure it by this. There's so much more happening and going on.
I think I would just bring us home and offer you any parting words with saying the
Yeah.
following: getting out of our own way. What I'm hearing from you is getting out of our own heads and thoughts and the stories they're spinning about what other people will think, what they are thinking, what they will tolerate, what they won't tolerate. And then I love it because it really goes with everything you've been talking about, this little cold,
Yeah.
You got a cold. It's not pleasant. It's making you feel like your voice doesn't sound the way you wish. It's also, for whatever reason, correlating with some more stuttering. But you got the cold because you spent time with your grandkid this week, and you wouldn't trade it to have skip the cold. So you take the good, you take the bad, and there you have, a very precious life. And so just to take it all together, I think getting out of your own way, the same way your nose getting stuffy is leading to more struggle, or you're noticing more stuttering. I don't want to use the word struggle, but you're noticing the stuttering goes up when your nose is stuffy. I think it ties in nicely with basically keeping your head clear, keeping your head and your thoughts clear, getting out of your own way. Don't let yourself get stuffed up. A lot of us, people who stutter and people who don't, we stuff up our heads with our own stuff. And we can kind of do a little spring cleaning, however we accomplish that, whether it's mindful meditation, whether it's some retreat, some experience, some book, some mentor, some guide. But I think getting out of your own way, maybe what I'm feeling is like it's getting out of my own head, unstuffing my head, because if I stuff up my head, it's not going to keep me better off. It's just going to get in my own way.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. It's just, it's really simple when you look at it, when you say it that way, right? But it's not, and I have to go back, if I'm going to end with something, it's the baby steps, because it's all about the kindness. And like today, for me, and this last, since Monday, I've been trying to figure, I can't get out of that. When I went through the voluntary stuttering, I'm not completely out of it, and I've never experienced that before. So baby steps, being kind to yourself. When you release the anger, release the frustration, release the disappointment that we have when we don't give ourselves our voice. That gets in our way. It's so that, though, just that disappointment, those things that that's I hate to say the word worse. it's more impactful than the actual stuttering.
Tougher, more challenging.
Yeah. So I say it's here I am, 63, right? And I'm still dealing with the waxing and the waning of the stuttering cycle. I still am, and it's going to happen the rest of my life. And the difference is now is when I got out of my own way, is that it's okay. It's just simply okay. It doesn't have to be anything more. I'm getting harder. It's harder for me to talk right now. And it doesn't have to be anything more than that. It's just this moment in time. I always tell people when they say, "Oh, I'm going to cycle," I go, "It's just a moment in time. It doesn't, you know what? It doesn't define who we are.
There you go.
That's it. It doesn't define who we are." Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to not miss the opportunity. We said this was going to be your birthday episode, so I'm just gonna drop one reference for. You can get more information at SchneiderSpeech.com/TSA if you're a person who stutters or you're a speech language pathologist. In particular, for speech language pathologists, an awesome opportunity to sign up for cohort 3 to join this community and the training. There'll be also CMHs and maybe more. So great opportunity there. And whoever you are, you can sign up for these free mini course to hear more about the Transcending Stuttering Framework. But now for the birthday song.
Oh God, you're not
Happy
singing, are you?
birthday. Oh, absolutely.
He's singing.
Marilyn Monroe style.
Okay. I'm sitting back for this. Let's
Happy
do it.
birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
That's great.
Happy birthday, Mrs. Executive Director. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
And many more.
Thank you.
Well, listen, the perspective, the wisdom, the honesty, and the insights are timeless and also priceless. So thank you for sharing so openly and taking the time, Annie. Many
Thank you
thanks.
for this opportunity. It's a true honor. I appreciate it.
If you've enjoyed it and you think Annie's words and voice are worth sharing, please do so. And certainly feel free to direct message Annie or message us. Let us know if there were any specific quotes or takeaways that you would like to see featured in future shares. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Next week, we'll be having Stephen Green from Ireland talking about the journey, acceptance and beyond. So stay tuned next week on Thursday, and on Wednesday, 11 a.m., we're always on Clubhouse. And we look forward to seeing some of you in Austin, Texas at the National Stuttering Association Conference, July 7th, 8th, that week, whatever it is, Wednesday, Thursday, go to westutter.org. Check out the details. And Friends for young people who stutter, their conference the following week. And with that, wish everybody an amazing day.